The morning after Corinne's arrest, the air in Maple Glen was charged with an energy I hadn't felt since the 4th of July potluck was canceled due to excessive mustard on hot dogs. Neighbors, who usually pretended not to notice each other, were suddenly more chatty. Dogs on walks slowed down near my driveway. Cars drove past just a little too slowly, their drivers craning their necks to get a glimpse of the guy whose truck got Corinne arrested. I wasn't used to being the center of neighborhood attention, but after the events of yesterday, I wasn't hiding either. I sipped coffee on my porch, nodding politely at the passers-by, and tried to pretend it was just another Tuesday, but it wasn't, not by a long shot. At exactly 10:07 a.m., the Maple Glen HOA's emergency newsletter landed in every inbox. It was titled, "Clarification Regarding Recent Community Incident." It was 1,300 words of corporate speak fluff attempting to downplay what had happened. The HOA board regrets any confusion or distress caused by a misunderstanding between one of our board members and a resident. It carefully avoided names, of course, but the damage control was obvious. Corinne's fingerprints were all over it, except now she wasn't Corinne from the HOA. She was Corinne on administrative leave pending review. I figured that was the end of it. Corinne had overstepped, gotten cuffed, and now the neighborhood power structure would finally chill out. But 3 days later, she was back, I spotted. Her strutting down the sidewalk in a purple windbreaker and giant sunglasses, her usual clipboard missing but her signature scowl intact. Her arrest hadn't humbled her. If anything, it had hardened her. She waved at a few loyalist neighbors like Craig Lindstrom, who once tried to sue another resident for planting a birch tree 2 feet off regulation. Corinne still had allies. And unfortunately, she wasn't done with me. That night, a certified letter slid under my door. It was a formal HOA violation notice. Apparently, I had now violated 5 separate community ordinances: unauthorized vehicle modification, tinted windows, excessive noise before 9 a.m., my power tools, aggressive posture toward a board member, unapproved exterior decor, my American flag license plate frame, improper use of common space for mechanical work, the kicker. Each violation came with a proposed fine $75 to $300. My total penalty was nearly $1,100. I laughed at first. Surely this was retaliation, right? Desperate attempt to save face. But then I started getting emails, actual, legitimate messages from the HOA board, confirming the violations and asking me to respond within 10 business days or face escalation to property liens. I could almost hear Corinne's voice echoing. In the phrasing, I decided it was time to push back. I gathered every receipt, email, and timestamped photo I had. I printed my registration documents again. I drafted a formal rebuttal citing state law that protected personal property from HOA overreach. Then I sent it all to the HOAS official email with a simple message: all accusations are false, and documentation disproves each claim. I will not pay a cent for fabricated violations. If the board chooses to escalate, I will see you in small claims court. I didn't expect much. But the next day, something surprising happened. I got a call from Heather Myers, the secretary. She sounded nervous, almost apologetic. "Hey, Mr. Langston? This is Heather from the Maple Glen board. I wanted to reach out directly. We've, been reviewing the situation, and I just want you to know some of us don't agree with how things have been handled." I sat up. "Are you saying these violations are bogus?" "I'm saying Corinne acted alone in submitting them. And while there's a board meeting next week, things might change." Interesting. What I didn't know was that behind the scenes, Corinne had started her own mini-campaign. Despite being on administrative leave, she was using her personal email to reach residents, spinning the incident as a resident's aggressive refusal to follow simple HOA rules, and painting herself as the victim of a smear campaign. She'd even created a Google form asking neighbors to report any suspicious behavior tied to vehicle activity. That backfired spectacularly. One by one, neighbors started forwarding her emails to me, expressing outrage. A couple of them Even apologized for ever siding with her. I used to think she was just strict, wrote one neighbor Sharon. Now I think she's unstable. If you need us to back you at the meeting, you've got my husband and me. The tide was turning, then came the video. A neighbor, Jenna, quiet, polite, barely talked at HOA meetings, uploaded doorbell footage of the entire truck key incident. From her porch cam across the street, the video clearly showed Karen attempting to unlock my truck, ignoring my protests, and calling the police after I confronted her. There was no sign of aggression from me, no threats, just frustration and disbelief. The video spread like wildfire through the neighborhood Facebook group. Comments exploded. She really thought she had a master key? This is beyond Ado. This is nuts. Why hasn't she been removed yet? By the time the HOA board meeting rolled around the following Wednesday, the clubhouse was packed. Residents who hadn't attended a meeting in years showed up. Some even brought popcorn. Karen wasn't on the board officially anymore, but she stood near the entrance like a ghost haunting her old kingdom. Her expression was unreadable. The meeting opened with a vote to discuss recent events and resident concerns. Heather presented the video. A collective gasp ran through the room as Karen's attempted key entry played on loop when Karen tried to interject. That footage is taken out of context. She was promptly asked to leave the microphone. You are not a sitting board member, said Heather firmly. You're here as a resident. A motion was introduced, permanent removal of Karen from any current or future HOA leadership role. It passed, unanimously. She tried to object, of course. This is a coup, a betrayal, she yelled, red-faced and trembling. But her voice was drowned out by a chorus of applause. Then Heather turned to me. There's one more item, she said. We'd like to publicly clear Mr. Langston of all wrongdoing and strike all recent citations from the HOA record. More applause. I nodded my thanks. A little stunned that justice had arrived so swiftly, Karen stormed out of the meeting, slamming the clubhouse door so hard a piece of decorative molding fell off the wall, and just like that, the Queen of Maple Glen had been dethroned. But if you think she went quietly, you don't know Karen. I never expected my Sunday morning to start with sirens and shouting. I had just stepped out of my house, a thermos of coffee in hand, ready to get some work done on my truck. It was a project I'd been working on for months, an old F-150 I'd inherited from my grandfather. Every bolt and wire held a memory, and I treated it like a family heirloom. The truck was parked, as always, in the communal lot of our HOA-run neighborhood, a place where you'd expect neighbors to borrow sugar, not summon the police. But then again, this was Maple Glen, home to well-manicured hedges, color-coded garbage bins, and one particularly relentless woman, Karen Whitmore. Karen wasn't just a neighbor. She was the self-appointed, iron-fisted ruler of the Maple Glen Homeowners Association. Though she technically held the title of HOA president, most of us joked when she wasn't around, of course, that she considered herself the mayor, judge, and sheriff of our peaceful little suburb. Blonde bob, stiff as concrete, pastel cardigans year-round, and a clipboard permanently affixed to her hand like an accessory she'd surgically attached. Karen was the kind of woman who would measure your grass and leave a warning notice if it was a quarter-inch too high. Everyone had their stories. Some folks shrugged her off, others feared her. Me? I just tried to stay out of her way, but this morning, avoidance was not an option. It started at 9:30 a.m. I remember the time exactly because I'd just unlocked my truck to grab a wrench set from under the passenger seat. That's when I noticed her, Karen, standing across the street, glaring at me from behind oversized sunglasses, phone in one hand, clipboard in the other. Her lips moved as she muttered into the Bluetooth earpiece she wore like a secret agent. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She just stared like I was trespassing on sacred land. I should have known she was up to something. At 9:18 a.m. I went back inside to grab some gloves. I'd left the truck door ajar. When I returned not 3 minutes later, I froze in disbelief. Karen was crouched by my driver's side door, keys jingling in one hand, the other gripping the door handle like she had every right to be there. Excuse me. What are you doing? I shouted. She stood up calmly, not a hint of surprise or guilt in her expression. I'm performing an HOA security sweep, she replied, as if that were a perfectly normal explanation. With keys? I pointed, incredulous. She raised a single silver key and held it aloft like she'd just pulled it from the Lady of the Lake. This, she said, is the HOA master key. It grants access to all community vehicles for emergency inspection. I blinked. I could practically hear my blood pressure rising. There's no such thing as a master key for people's private trucks. Karen pursed her lips. Well, there should be. She jiggled the key again and shoved it into the lock. Of course it didn't turn. My truck wasn't HOA property. It never had been. But Karen wasn't going to let that technicality stop her. She tried again, twisting with more force. That's attempted break-in, I said. Get your hands off my truck, she scoffed. You're violating HOA Code 7.2 C unregistered vehicle in common area for more than 72 hours. I stepped closer. That truck is registered. I've sent you the paperwork twice. She didn't flinch, and I rejected it both times. The paint job is non-standard, the tires are oversized, and you don't get to decide what's in my grandfather's will or what I drive. Karen finally let go of the door, pulling back like I was the one who'd crossed the line. You're becoming aggressive, she said, reaching for her phone. I'm calling the police. For what? I asked. For failing to break into my truck? For obstructing HOA duties and threatening a board member and possibly driving an illegal vehicle. The absurdity stunned me silent. I watched as she walked 10 feet back and dialed, narrating her version of events with the calm conviction of a woman who'd weaponized her neighborhood title. Within minutes, red and blue lights lit the cul-de-sac like a 4th of July show gone wrong. When the officers arrived, I expected common sense to prevail. I'd dealt with neighborhood disputes before, missing garbage lids, loud music, the usual suburban drama, but nothing like this. I approached the lead officer, Officer Callahan, and explained everything: my ownership of the truck, Karen's unauthorized use of a so-called master key, and her attempt to enter my vehicle without consent. Karen, meanwhile, put on the performance of her life. She's lying, I heard her tell another officer. I approached the vehicle because it looked suspicious. I feared for the safety of the neighborhood. You never know what people hide in trucks these days. And when I asked for identification, he became belligerent. Threatened to make me regret it, his exact words. Are you serious? I muttered. Officer Callahan turned to her. Ma'am, do you have any proof of ownership or authority to open this vehicle? Karen opened her clipboard with the flourish of a magician revealing a rabbit. Here, she said, presenting a crumpled printout. Section 8, Line 14, vehicles parked longer than 3 days are subject to review. And here's the form I submitted for approval to perform visual inspection. The officer glanced at the paper, then back at me. Can you show me your registration and ID? Gladly, I said, retrieving both from my wallet. Also, check the truck plates. It's all legal. Another officer radioed in the information. A minute later, he gave a thumbs up. All clear, it's his truck. No outstanding violations. Clean record, I exhaled. See? Karen didn't budge. Then I want to press charges. He threatened me. The officers looked at each other. One finally said, Ma'am, what we have is a private citizen attempting to access another private citizen's locked vehicle with a key that does not belong to that vehicle. That's closer to attempted unlawful entry than anything else. Karen's face paled. I am the HOA president, and that doesn't give you law enforcement authority, the officer said coolly. The next few minutes played out like a courtroom drama. Karen, refusing to back down, escalated the situation, calling the HOA vice president, who declined to get involved, then demanding to speak to a supervisor. Eventually her voice turned shrill. Do you know who I am? She asked the officers, one hand waving in the air, the other still gripping the clipboard like a holy relic. Officer Callahan had had enough. Yes. Ma'am, he said, reaching for his handcuffs, and you're under arrest for attempted unlawful entry, false accusation, and misuse of authority. You have the right to remain silent. The rest of his words were drowned out by the gasps of a few neighbors who had gathered on their lawns. Cameras came out. Phones filmed every second. Karen sputtered protests as she was gently guided into the back of the squad car as the vehicle pulled away. Someone nearby clapped. I stood there, stunned and relieved, still clutching my thermos. My coffee had gone cold, but the satisfaction warming my chest more than made up for it. Little did I know this was only the beginning.